This video is to be used for training purposes only. No real students or data is being shared as we are conducting this in a sandbox server with fake students and fake data. Any likeness to any real student is purely coincidental. Before we jump in, we are going to go through some PowerSchool resources. First of all, my name is Kendall Tankersley and I'm one of the PowerSchool coaches. We're available to provide support to you when it comes to our PowerSchool products. You have our contact information here on the screen, so please feel free to reach out at any point if you need any support or have any questions. Also, we have the PowerSchool Update newsletter. This is sent via email and it comes every first day of the week. This is going to have upcoming trainings like this one, and it's also going to have information about updates or changes or new features for the platforms that you'll need to know about. This newsletter is being sent using emailing lists from the education directory. So the listed user roles are receiving this newsletter. If you are not receiving the newsletter, make sure you reach out to whoever at your school or district does the education directory positions and make sure that yours is up to date. We also have the PowerSchool PD Plus campus. This is PowerSchool's training website. It's a great place for you to go in and get some training on a specific topic or a specific task. This is going to be just generic PowerSchool training. It's not Alabama specific. So if you do have questions that deal with things that are needing to be Alabama specific, especially when it comes to attendance, enrollment, things that we have actual data codes for, you'll want to make sure that you are using our PowerSchool Alabama edition website. That is going to be our Alabama specific hub for all things. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in chat for those of you that are on this session with me today. But also, if you're watching back the recording, you can Google search PowerSchool Alabama edition, and it should be your first result that pops up. On this website, you're going to find several different resources. There is a alphabetized menu on the left-hand side, and there's also several different resources down the page. You can search for a topic you're looking for. And if there's a resource that you cannot find, please reach out to us and let us know so that we can create something and put it on the website for you. All right, so we are going to jump into our topic, which is multiple schedules within the same building. And for any of you that were on some of my sessions last week, I am going to apologize again. I am still feeling a little under the weather, so if I have to pause and mute, I apologize. Just know that it's probably because I'm having a coughing fit. I think everybody's dealing with allergies. I'm hoping this weather, this rain will kind of wipe all that pollen away. All right, so we are jumping in first. When we talk about multiple schedules within the same building, this is going to need to be accomplished using periods. So your periods are going to be very important. So when we walk through this, if you're working in Power Scheduler, the first question you're going to need to ask yourself is how many periods do I need? So a period will be needed for every grade level that needs to run a separate schedule within your building. So if I have, let's say, a K 12 school, I might need elementary to run a certain schedule, and maybe my middle and high school run a different schedule. And what I mean by that is that within the building, they are starting and stopping their classes at different times. Anytime you need a group of students, a grade level, to move from one class to another at a different time, you're going to need a different set of periods. So if I just have periods 1, 2, 3, and 4, when I set up a bell schedule, the time that I assign period 1 is universal for every class that's placed in period 1. If I need something else to be happening at the same time, I can do that, but I need another period to be running alongside that. And I'm going to show you an example in our platform. So, in this example, let's say that our K through 6 is only going to need one period in the bell schedule because they have homeroom and all of their other classes are scheduled outside of the bell schedule. So I need one period that I'm placing their homeroom class in or whatever it may be. My 7th through 12th grades are going to need 8 periods. So, in that scenario, I'm going to need 9 periods to work with when I am creating my bell schedule. Now, if I need to also place, those K through 6 classes for ELA and math and all that stuff, then I'll need to add in those additional periods too, but I wouldn't identify them in the bell schedule. So then there's also this next example. What if I have a middle school that needs 6th, 7th, and 8th to all run different schedules at the same time? That is also possible. So each grade level in this scenario is going to have 6 periods, but the start and stop time will change. So in order to set this up, if I have 3 different grade levels that each need to have 6 periods with different start and stop times, then I'm going to need 18. Oh, I'm going to need 18 total periods because I'm going to need a set of 6 periods for each grade level. Let's actually take a look at that in a training server so I can show you exactly what that looks like. And it's just going to take a second to log me in. If you have any questions or if you have any specific scenarios that you would like some assistance in walking through, please let me know. We would be happy to take a look at what you are thinking about doing and help you make it happen. So I'm actually going to come over to my middle school because in my middle school, I have this exact scenario that we're looking at with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I'm going to go to my bell schedule. All right, and in this school, everybody goes to a homeroom first, but just know that you don't have to do that anymore. So previously, prior to our Alabama attendance update in the 23-24 school year, I think is when it was. It's been a couple of years now. We used to have one common bridge period for the entire school. And that was for attendance, but you no longer have to have that. There does not have to be a single common period amongst the entire school any longer. So, this school just wants to go to homeroom. If you do not want your kiddos to go to homeroom first, then you wouldn't have to do that. Everyone could just start in their own first period. So I want to point out here, I'm going to hide that homeroom just so you can see this in case this is what you're looking for. So I have periods called 6_1, 7_1, and 8_1. So what that means is that this is for my 6th grade, this is for my 7th, and this is for my 8th grade. Notice that each of these have different times in my bell schedule. So, if I wanted to make sure that, my hallways weren't too crowded and they're releasing a little bit differently, or maybe 6th grade is doing a completely different schedule from 7th and 8th grade, we can make that happen. But you always have to remember whatever is unique needs to have a unique period. So in this case, 6th grade is unique. So I need unique periods for 6th grade. 7th grade is also unique. They do their own thing. So I need periods for 7th grade. And 8th grade is also unique. So I need periods for that grade as well. They can be going at similar times alongside each other, but I cannot have more than one time identified for a single period. So if this was just called first period, I couldn't have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes in here and have different times going. So what I've done in my schedule is I've created 6th grade periods, 7th grade periods, and 8th grade periods. So when I'm scheduling classes, only 6th grade classes go in 6th grade periods, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So 6th grade, 7th, and 8th grade, their first period all starts at 8:45. But notice that the end time is a little different. So 6th goes to 9:44, 7th goes to 9:35, and 8th goes to 9:47. Then when it comes to second period, notice I have a 6th, 7th, and 8th for that as well, because now even the start times are a little different. So it can be a little confusing the first time you're setting this up, but the most important, like the overarching idea is that if a group of students, a grade level, will say, has to have their own schedule within the building, they need a unique set of periods. So then when I'm actually scheduling this, I'm going to come over here to teacher schedules and we're going to take a look at what this looks like when we're scheduling classes. So as a teacher, I'm going to see whatever periods I have classes scheduled in for. But when I'm creating a class, I'm going to see all of the different period options. So here's my 6_1 through 6, 7_1 through 6, and 8_1 through 6. So if I'm creating a class, let's say this is English that I'm creating, and it is English grade 6, then that means it needs to be in one of these 6th grade periods. So I'll place it in that period. I'll set it up. And if I'm doing this in Power Scheduler, same thing. When I go into Power Scheduler, I want to make sure that my classes for 6th grade are in 6th grade periods. If I'm using that visual scheduler, I'm dragging and dropping the periods into the correct the classes, into the correct period. So, naming your period something that lets you know that this is for that specific grade level is very helpful. You do only get 3 characters. So, sometimes if it's like elementary, high school, some people do like ES1, HS1, or if it's just grade levels, this, 6_1, but you do only get 3 characters. So keep that in mind. So all of my classes then, if they're 6th grade, they're going to go in 6th grade periods. If they're 7th grade, they're going to go in 7th grade periods. My teachers will see their schedule as normal. Whatever classes I've scheduled them to have in whatever periods, they will be able to see that. But for a student, if I come to a student that's in 6th grade, the student will only see the classes they have on their um, schedule. Let me see if I have any that have multiple classes. Doesn't look like it. Let me see what I can do here. So if I were building a schedule for a 6th grader, then let's see here. Oh, I would want to make sure that I'm looking at only 6th grade periods. And when I am creating a schedule for a student, I will make sure that if this is 6th grade student, I'm looking at 6th grade classes in 6th grade periods. Let's see what we've got here. I'm just going to build it with this AAS since I've already got them here. So we've got a 6_1, and then we need a 6_2. We've got 6_3, and we're going to do 6_4. And we need 6_5. Now, of course, you probably have a much more efficient way of scheduling your kiddos. You're either using Schedule Mass Enroll or Register is what it's called now, I think, or you're using Power Scheduler. But I just really want you to see a student's full schedule here and how it looks just for that one student. All right. So for this one student, even though there are classes and periods for seventh grade and eighth grade, this is a sixth grade student. So for the sixth grade student, I only give them sixth grade classes. So if I go to, let's say, look at their attendance and look at their um, bell schedule view or something like that, notice that their day is full with just their periods because I have identified the start and stop time for all of the sixth grade periods. The sixth grade periods have their own start and stop time, but that identifies this sixth grade student's entire day. So the 6_1 through 2, notice it ends at 9:44. The next one starts at 9:44. We have no gaps. I have 10:40 to 10:40, 11:34 to 11:34, 12:23 to 12:23, 1:57 to 1:57, and that is just for a sixth grader. So then if I have a seventh grade and an eighth grade schedule, then my seventh graders are going to be placed in classes in the seventh grade periods, and my eighth graders are going to be placed in classes in the eighth grade periods. And their screen would look very similar, but their periods would be the seventh or the eighth grade. So I can set this up using multiple periods. All right, the next thing is another scenario. So just thinking about something different. We talked about three different grade levels needing different schedules. And we said each of them needed 6 periods. There were three grade levels, so that needed 18 periods. So let's talk about this one. A high school is running a rotating schedule where 8 periods meet on Monday, even periods on Tuesday and Thursday, and odd on Wednesday and Friday. How many periods does this school need to set up? This is a little bit of a trick question because they only need 8 periods. And a lot of people may be thinking at this point, well, wouldn't they just set up cycle days for that? So you do have two different options if you wanted to do that. For a rotating schedule, you can either set up your rotation using cycle days. So in this case, I have a Monday, a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Wednesday, Friday. If I were going to do cycle days, I would need 3 cycle days. Or I can also just use periods. And I would set up my 8 periods and I would have a bell schedule created for Monday, a bell schedule created for Tuesdays and Thursdays, and a bell schedule created for Wednesdays and Fridays. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go back to my high school and I want to show you two different things. If you choose to do cycle days, when you set up a class, you're going to have multiple columns for your periods. So if you remember when we were back over in the middle school, I had one column. I had some sixth grade periods, seventh grade periods, and eighth grade periods. Here in my high school, I do have some cycle days. So notice I have two different columns. So on my school calendar, will define what days are red days, what days are black days. So if your cycle days are Mondays and then odd evens, you would go into your calendar and you would say Monday is a Monday cycle day. That tells PowerSchool that only classes that have a check mark in that column meet on that day. So when you set up the class, you need to go in and say, what days does this meet? Does it only meet on red day? Does it only meet on black day? And then when you set up your calendar, you're identifying which cycle day meets. So that is option one. That is the kind of the more traditional way of doing things. But in my opinion, especially for those that are setting up and having to go in and check the boxes for periods and all that, not necessarily the easiest way to do it. Another way to do it is to leave yourself one single cycle day and to do this with bell schedules. So I'm going to come over here to scheduling and bell schedules. And here I can have multiple bell schedules. So I just have a regular schedule here. It's first through fourth period. But what if I had 8 periods and my Monday, I identified whatever my times are for Monday, but then I create a new bell schedule and I call this Tuesday, Thursday. And on Tuesday and Thursday, whether this is odd or even, maybe it's odd, and I say, okay, so first period goes from 7:50 to 11, whatever it may be. And third period goes from 11 to, we'll say, 2:30. This is not a very good bell schedule, obviously, but just an example here. So those are my, because I only have 4 periods. You would probably be doing this when you have 7 or 8 periods to work with. So I would identify, first, third, fifth, seventh, and their times for Tuesdays and Thursdays. That tells Power School that on the days in my calendar where I have this bell schedule applied, only these periods meet, and these are the times of those periods. If I look at trying to find a student, it works the same as any other schedule. If I have the Tuesday, Thursday bell schedule applied in my calendar, then when I'm doing the locate a student function, it's going to find them in the periods that I've said met on that day. So then I could create a Wednesday, Friday bell schedule. And when I go into my calendar, for my calendar, I have to apply a cycle day and a bell schedule. Well, if I do not have a cycle day to apply, then it's just all going to be a day. And for my bell schedule, I can say, okay, this is Monday, so I'm going to use Monday's bell schedule. This is Tuesday, so I'm going to use the Tuesday, Thursday bell schedule. And that is how I can set it up. That those are two different ways, whichever one you're more comfortable with. Always ask people when you're creating your schedule, would you rather schedule in your teacher schedules, if you're creating your master, would you rather just schedule out your full 8 period day and only have to worry about that, and then from your bell schedule identify which ones meet every day? Or when you're creating your teacher schedules, do you want to have to go in and check the boxes? This meets on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, or this meets on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Where would you rather do that designation? Because that right there is going to answer the question to which one makes more sense to you. Does it make more sense to just schedule periods 1 through 8 in the teacher schedule and then create bell schedules for your cycles, your rotation, and apply that here in the calendar? Or does it make more sense to create a teacher schedule and have those columns that say Monday, check that box, Tuesday, Thursday, check that box? Whichever one makes more sense for you. All right, so whichever route you decide or whatever you need to do as far as setting up maybe your multiple schedules in your building, if you are working in Power Scheduler and you're copying over a master schedule, it is going to automatically copy the number of periods that you have had in whatever schedule you copied. So if you copied your 25-26 schedule, it's going to automatically copy that number of periods. If you need to add more periods, you will actually open up your scenario and you will change the number of periods in the scenario setup. Now, what I would advise against is reducing the number of periods until after you have completely moved everything wherever you need to move it. And let me show you why. So we're going to go into Power Scheduler and take a look at this. in order to change the number of periods, if you're adding, there is no worries. You can go ahead and do that at any point. So you're going to find your scenario. So here's mine. You're going to click on it, and it's going to bring you to your edit scenario page. This is where you can add periods in. This is also where you could remove periods if you don't need that many, but I want to caution you against doing that until you're sure that the periods that you're removing don't have anything in them. So if I just need to add one, I would just add one, and I'll come down here and I'll hit submit. And that'll add a period for me. Where do I find the periods? They're over here on the left. So these are the periods, and here's that one that I added. I can rename them here. You can change, you can like drag things here and submit that change. But what you want to make sure of is, okay, let's say I only need 14. I only need down here to this, I've actually dragged 14 up here. Let me move it back down so it's in order so it makes sense here. So let's say in my scenario now, the way we're going to do my schedule, I only need 14 periods. So I want to remove periods 15, 16, and 17. I can't do it on this screen. I would go back to that scenario and I would remove them there. But what I want to caution you against is before you just go remove them, come over to your visual scheduler. If it'll let me. There we go. And I want you to make sure, there we go. Want you to make sure you don't have anything in those periods. And look here, I have a class scheduled in period 14. So if I were to just go and delete that, if I was delete, well, think I'm deleting 15, 16, 17, but if I were deleting period 14, then it would just delete that class. So sometimes the changes that you're making is that you're moving from 8 periods to 7 or 7 periods to 6 or something like that. Before you remove that period from your scenario, take this class and move it to where it needs to be out of that period. So I'm going to just scroll across and see, do I have anything in 15, 16, or 17? I don't. So what I can do now is I can come back up here to my scenarios. I'm going to click on my active scenario, and I'm going to change this to just 14 periods and hit submit. And I didn't delete anything. So you just want to make sure that you're taking a look at that. If you need to add periods, it's no problem. You're just adding a new blank period. But if you're removing them, take a second and go through and make sure that there's nothing in that period before you remove it. So we've got you the instructions here on how you can add the periods in your scenario. If you need to do that, you want to make sure that you decide, am I doing this with periods? Am I doing this with cycle days while you're kind of in the early stages of Power Scheduler? Because if I'm doing this with periods, I will actually create my bell schedule later. So I'm just working with a single day. That's kind of how it's going to look. So I need to make sure I've got the correct number of periods so I can put, 6th grade classes and 6th grade periods. So what's next? We scheduled the courses into the periods, like I just mentioned, 6th grade classes into 6th grade periods. But the order of the periods in Power Scheduler does not matter. So it may give you all of your 6th grade periods in one listing and then jump down to 7th grade periods, and that's okay. What you will actually do is set up a bell schedule after you commit to the live side, and that is where the times of the day will be applied. You don't actually do anything with start and stop times in Power Scheduler. That is all on the live side with the bell schedule. You want to make sure you do not set up a bell schedule until after you commit to the live side. what happens is when you commit, it is going to kind of reinitialize your calendar and all that kind of stuff so it can wipe everything out. So you want to make sure that you commit first. Then we have the instructions after you commit. You can go to school management scheduling and bell schedules. And this is where we were looking to indicate the start and stop time for the periods. And we would need to have any period that is a part of a student's day that is giving them time in the day accounted for in the bell schedule. Now, a lot of elementary grades and even some middle school grade levels have one singular period in the bell schedule. That is fine. That means that whatever that period is the one period in the bell schedule. I actually have an elementary school that looks like that, so let's go look at that. That is very common. You may have additional periods created, but there's only one in the bell schedule. And remember, the bell schedule is what gives the students their minutes. So I'm going to come over here to scheduling and bell schedules. And here is my schedule. It's one period, it's homeroom from 7:45 to 2:50. But if I come over here to teacher schedules, homeroom is the only thing that gives the students the times in their day. Oh, let's try this one. Homeroom may be the only period that gives the students times in the day, but we have other periods. Why am I not a teacher in any of these schools anymore? Let's try this one. Somebody's been playing around with staff. Here we go. So for the students' minutes, homeroom is what's in the bell schedule. So homeroom is what you would see if you did like a student search. Homeroom is what the student is considered in for check-ins, check-outs all day from 7:45 to 2:50. But we also have these other periods where those subjects, conduct, PE, all of that other stuff can go. That's very common in our elementary and even some middle schools. So oh, wrong button. The times that you are going to be using for students, those are identified in the bell schedule. And then the periods that those students are in need to be identified in the bell schedule. Your bell schedules are copied from year to year, so whatever bell schedules you are currently using are going to be copied over. So if there's no changes, you don't have to make any changes. But if you are attending this session because you're going to try something new, make sure that you go in after you commit your schedule and update that bell schedule because whatever you currently have copies over. And then we've already talked about if you're going to use different schedules in the same building, we need a period for each group of students that has a unique rotation or movement throughout the building. So in my example, it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we needed a set of periods for 6th grade, a set of periods for 7th, a set of periods for 8th. You want to make sure that all minutes in a student's day are accounted for. This is really important. You want to make sure because you are sometimes working with, in my example, 18 periods. Make sure that you go through and check for just 6th grade. Does the start time and end time match up and does it account for the student's entire day? We can have periods outside the bell schedule, but we want to make sure that the periods in the bell schedule do not have any gaps. You can have transition time in your building. That is fine. Your bells can ring at whatever time you need them to, but the bell schedule in Power School identifies the students' minutes in their day. And if you put gaps in there for transition, you're taking minutes away from the student's day. If that student needed to check out during those 4 minutes, you would not be able to check them out because it's a PowerSchool assumes they're not scheduled. So you want to make sure all minutes in the student's day are accounted for. There's no gaps. If first period ends at 9:35, second period begins at 9:35. And here is a screenshot for you. You'll notice the homeroom ended at 8:45. Remember, you no longer have to have that homeroom unless you want it. There no longer has to be a common period for the entire school. And that's just something that previously we had to have. So a lot of people still think we have to have it, but we don't. You can start with 3 different periods, all starting at the same time, but having different ending times. So, in order to ensure this accounts for the student's entire day, I would want to make sure my first period is the start of my day. This one ends at 9:44. 6_2 starts at 9:44. To 10:40, 6_3 starts at 10:40. To 11:34, 6_4 starts at 11:34. 12:23, 6_5 starts at 12:23. 1:57 to 157, and then 3:20 is the end. So if that 3:20, 8:45 is my day and there were no gaps, then that student has a full day and every minute is accounted for. And I would want to make sure I check 7th grade and 8th grade for that as well. And then also, if you needed to rotate, you can create multiple bell schedules. For that example that we looked at, the high school is meeting all 8 periods on Monday. I would create a Monday bell schedule that has all 8 periods and the start and stop times. Then I could create a Tuesday, Thursday bell schedule that just has my odd or my even, whatever it may be, and a Wednesday, Friday. When I go into my calendar, after I commit my schedule, that is when I would identify what bell schedule and calendar or cycle day, excuse me, is meeting, whichever way I choose to do it. This is doing it with bell schedules, so I would have one cycle day and my bell schedule would be applied Monday bell schedule for Monday in the calendar. Here is a screenshot of what that looks like. I would have the same cycle day and then I would choose my bell schedule. If you want your students to rotate courses, that is a common question we get when we have this multiple schedules in the same building session. We do have worksheets that help you set that up. There is a 4 course rotation. So this is going to be a new course every 9 weeks, excuse me. So every quarter. And then there is a 6 course rotation. So, whichever one of those you need, we do have a document that tells you how to set that up in Power Scheduler. So, these documents are for Power Scheduler. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pop my email address back up on the screen and stop the recording.